One again. Do you know any good jokes?
Gender equality.
Selective equality is so true because we are only equal until we don't want to be equal anymore. We always want more female CEOs, but nobody wants more female plumbers. You know, it's the men who go to war first. It's the men who are building the very infrastructure which we walk on. You know, I was walking on Brickell Quay the other day and I saw these men hanging from these cranes. They're putting these windows on and I saw one man trying to hang out the window to grab the window, and it's the men that are doing that. It's not the women. Men create the infrastructure that the boss bitch can then sit out on and go, I'm a boss bitch. But who put you there? It was the man. The man created the chair, the floor, the levels. It's the man that's going to run into the burning building. You're going to call the men when somebody comes and robs your house.
The possibility of women benefiting more from affirmative action than racial minorities could be supported by what is termed as interesting to women and what is not. In the videos on the myth that is the gender pay gap, especially the sections on how the choice of work or profession influences pay, we covered claims that women are underrepresented in high-paying jobs while they're overrepresented in low-paying jobs. In the video, we debunked that myth by highlighting the fact that some of the highest-paying professions such as human resource and psychiatry are female-dominated, while some of the lowest-paying jobs, especially the death professions, are male-dominated. Of special interest in the context of this video is the fact that when it comes to affirmative action, especially gender-based affirmative action, the push for equality is only restricted to position of money, power, and influence. Of course, you have repeatedly heard that women are underrepresented in politics, academia, positions of tenure, corporate boards, STEM fields, and leaders of the Fortune 500 companies. What you almost never hear is women are underrepresented in construction, logging, roofing, or garbage collection. You almost never hear quotas in important but not so glamorous professions in society such as welders, dishwashers, seamen, and fishermen. You will definitely never hear complaints about male dominance in mining, ironwork, oil field laborers, refuse management, or preparing the dead for burial. While you might find it difficult to separate these professions by race, the ease with which you can separate them by gender is quite laughable to say the least. Complaining of the so-called glass ceiling that's keeping women out of the prestigious positions and the high-paying jobs while completely oblivious of the glass floor or cellar that's keeping women out of the trenches and working in harsh environments. It is becoming increasingly clear that feminists and like-minded people have a problem with discrimination when it doesn't favor their own, but when it does, they even have a name for it: positive discrimination. For the record, discrimination against men is positive. If we're supposed to deal with the whole patriarchy and institutional discrimination narrative, women were kept out of leadership, academia, and business just like they were kept out of prison, dangerous jobs, and conscription or forced military service. Now that we are saying discrimination is bad and we're formulating policies to get women ahead in academia, leadership, and business, why are we forgetting about programs to make sure more women are forced into military service to equalize the responsibility of protecting democracy like we do when it comes to participating in it? As well as ascertain that the 2/3 gender rule applies to dangerous jobs in prison systems? Prison systems are more lenient towards women as for the same crime, when controlling for legal relevant factors, especially criminal history and severity of the crime, women get up to 63% less prison sentences than men. The whole women being perceived as nurturers and homemakers that feminists and like-minded people fight against since it raises questions about their professional competence is embraced when it becomes beneficial. In criminal proceedings, women being nurturers and homemakers implies that having dependents for women is a mitigating factor against heavy prison sentences, thereby getting lighter sentences or no prison time at all. What happens to affirmative action then? Since women being kept out of employment has warranted programs and policies that facilitates women economic empowerment, prison has always and still keeps men out of meaningful employment. How about quotas for that? How about quotas for the number of women who should be in prison at any given time? The gendered nature of the criminal justice system is quite interesting that it requires an entire video. For instance, A man convicted of murder is 20 times more likely than a woman convicted of the same to receive the death penalty. All the people who have been executed through the death penalty in the US and later found to be innocent are men. Back to the whole women being hired for their gender as opposed to merit, as we had pointed out earlier. A common argument about more men being in position of power revolves around unearned male privilege offered by society to men. So do feminists and social scientists have a problem with someone in their position because of everything but merit? 2 areas of interest: firefighting and military service.
Military training can be excruciating at its highest levels. But at the bare minimum, a Marine's got to be able to do 3 pull-ups.
Why I want to ensure that every Marine is successful at maxing out their pull-ups on their PFDs.
But more than half the female recruits couldn't do it. So the Marines are pushing back the day when it becomes mandatory.
If you have a failure rate of 55% and 99% of the men are succeeding, obviously this is not going to work.
Men have to do 3 pull-ups minimum to pass the Marines fitness test. It takes 20 to earn a perfect score. Women had to meet the same minimum, but only need 8 pull-ups to score perfect. Because so few passed, the Marines will let them choose to hang on the bar for 15 seconds and pass without doing any pull-ups.
Wide grip stance that works best for you.
Marine Corps officials admit pull-ups are better, and the flexed arm hang elicits little muscular strength adaptations necessary for common military tasks, such as pulling oneself over obstacles or carrying equipment.
Generally, I'm not in favor of lowering any standards.
Zoe Bedell is a former Marine Corps officer who commanded troops in Afghanistan. Could you do 3 pull-ups?
I was at one point able to do 5 pull-ups, but it was that first one that probably took me the longest to get to.
Bedell says women have to learn how to do pull-ups, something many have never done.
Sort of experiment with different techniques, figure out what other exercises to do.
Critics say the big push over pull-ups is part of a bigger problem. Pressure from the White House to make the military gender neutral.
Something is wrong here, and it's not the women's faults. It's the policy that the Marines are pursuing.
Obviously, this is a big deal, Chris Lawrence. What do the Marines do next so that they're not in this same spot a year from now?
Yeah, Don, it's clearly a setback for the big plan to put thousands of women into combat roles by 2016. Look, there are women who are clearly ready. 13 female Marines just finished the infantry course, a grueling 60-day course that they successfully completed. I think what the Marines, an official told me, what they're going to do now is something that really Zoe Bedell talked about, which is looking at better ways to train women to do these push-ups. There's a feeling that, from the time they're girls, girls don't do push-ups. Even women who work out religiously and are very physically fit are not working those kind of muscles and trying to build up that bigger upper body by doing pull-ups. So what they want to do is go in and really teach women better ways to train to do this particular exercise.
Yeah.
Recently, Congress has mandated that all branches of the military review policies that restrict female members' service. The Marine Corps, that means integrating women into the infantry. This summer, several volunteers are the first women to train for the infantry and will join their brothers in arms this fall. But not everybody believes this latest step towards equal rights is a good idea, including a female Marine officer who has been on the front lines. Joining me now is Captain Katie Petronio. Good morning to you, Captain.
Good morning.
So before we talk about what may happen in the future, help me understand what women are allowed to do right now.
There's numerous support roles that women have right now. There are certain restrictions also, and that's what Congress is kind of mandating that we look into. Fields like infantry or artillery or tanks are areas that females have not been allowed to participate in.
So there was this push in the last couple of years to let women do more, to technically be on the so-called front lines. Do you agree with it?
Well, there's really no front line anymore. This isn't conventional enemy. Females have definitely played a strong role in combat operations in a supporting capacity. My specific concern is opening up infantry for females.
Why?
It's definitely not a cost. The cost definitely outweighs the benefits. It's not going to help the individual, and it's not going to help the institution. We're a warfighting institution, and combat readiness needs to be at the front and foremost when we make decisions like this, and I don't think that this change is going to benefit anybody.
But why not?
Why not? There's an understanding or a misconception outside of the Marine Corps that preventing women from taking on these roles possibly restricts our opportunities for promotion. In the Marine Corps, men and women are promoted at the same rate. So the other question then I present is longevity. We're talking about opening up opportunities for females, but my concern that I point out in the article is that there's these gender-specific medical concerns that are going to come with opening these fields that I'm not so sure we've really thought about. And on the backside of that, there's going to be a cost associated with these medical conditions. And are we ready to pay the price for that?
I guess that was my question about why you think that it's a bad idea, because you yourself, I mean, by all regards, you're a very high-achieving woman, not only in life, but in the military. And what you point out in this article is that you went through some of the rigorous training that the men did, and what happened to you?
I've faced a lot of weight loss, muscle atrophy. I also developed polycystic ovarian syndrome, which for me resulted in infertility. It's a type of combat environment these days that's very strenuous, and I was only doing a portion of what our infantry brothers do. I'm physically fit, definitely one of the top in the females for physical fitness. However, I degraded, and of course I understand that every female is going to break down at a different rate, but our male counterparts are breaking down also, and I just think it's an unnecessary risk that we could be taking on.
So let me understand this. If, in fact, women are going to be on these so-called front lines, I know you say they don't really exist anymore, but just for terminology, on the front lines, will it be their own personal choice to be allowed to try it out, or will they just be commanded to do that even if they don't want to?
This will be a blanket assignment, so any female who joins the Marine Corps, private, as an enlisted side, or as a second lieutenant as an officer, can be told to serve as an infantryman, and she will have to serve in that capacity.
Because I'm surprised that you're saying you don't think that women should be able to join the Special Forces.
It's not about equality for me, it's about the physical aspect, and the only way for females to be able to join the SAS, we're not talking the front line here, we're talking the SAS, which is an elite troop. 3% of men only pass the SAS selection. Grown men are reduced to tears.
If they do want to go for it and they feel that they can pass the standards, and they do, then surely they should be allowed the opportunity to join.
The opportunity, yes. However, women have been able to join the infantry now. Not a single female has passed week 4 of the training. Yes, there are females that can do it. Let me tell you, I don't know a single female that is serving in the forces that would want to be in the SAS. The females that are actually that physically fit are competing in the Olympics. I don't know where you're going to get the females.
Okay. Groups or units that are all male perform better than mixed units that include females. Now, according to the study, all male units were faster, more lethal, and able to evacuate casualties in less time. Also, all male squads performed better than mixed groups in 69% of the tasks evaluated.
Unfortunate number.
All right, so that is kind of an interesting number. Also, all male squads, the study found, performed better than mixed gender units across the board. The males were more accurate hitting targets, faster at climbing over obstacles, and better at avoiding injuries.
Who did the study?
The Marine Corps. So
I believe it.
Yeah, I'm really happy that Wes is on the panel to talk about this, because remember, it was only 2 years ago that the government decided, all right, well, as long as women pass certain tests, then they can also fight on the front lines. And I agreed with that decision as long as they pass the tests. But if tests indicate that they're not physically able to do the same things that their male counterparts can do, then they shouldn't be fighting on the front lines.
So, well, okay, now this is an interesting question, because I believe that all those women are passing the minimum requirements. But the reality might be, and we don't know, remember, there's still a lot of knuckleheads in the Marines, right? So it's not like, okay, we've got the data scientists in here and et cetera.
It's a 1 year-long study, so just keep that in mind. It's not
No, I hear you, but the Marines in the past, in 1992, decided that women were clear detriment to all fighting forces, et cetera, right? So there's the Marines, and they did a long study. I mean, that study was
no.
not accurate.
I think you're misunderstanding.
It's a pretty extensive study, dude. You should look at the study first.
Okay, so no. Look, I'm not dismissing it. I'm about to agree with it. Okay, but I'm saying take it with some degree of salt. It wasn't an independent group. It was the Marines did fight this for their entire existence, right?
You could argue that they were incentivized to come up with these results. But I tend to, I'm much more likely to agree with Wes.
Right, and don't get me wrong, they could have also been incentivized to come up with the results to the counter to this because now the administration wants it, so
That's
there'll be
what I think
political
they're incentivized
pressure.
to.
Just because you pass a minimum doesn't mean that you're going to perform on average as well as males in the Marines, right? So if you have women in a certain unit, could they do the minimum? Yes. Could they be slower and not do the rest of the tests on average as well as just a male unit? It's possible, right? So, and that's what this study is indicating, given all the context of the study.
So let me give you guys some more details about what they found through this year-long study. They found that all male squads, teams, and crews and gender-integrated squads, teams, and crews had a noticeable difference in their performance of the basic combat tasks of negotiating obstacles and evacuating casualties. For example, when negotiating the wall obstacle, male Marines threw their packs to the top of the wall, whereas female Marines required regular assistance in getting their packs to the top. So my question is, during the testing to indicate whether or not these women would be eligible to fight in the front lines, why is it that that wasn't part of the testing requirement, right? Like if you can't throw your bag on top of a wall, then maybe you shouldn't be on the front lines, or maybe you shouldn't be in this unit.
So here's in West. So let's kick it over to you because you served, right? And here's what I don't get. So the Israelis have women in their military; they do perfectly fine, and many other countries do. So, but yet at the same time, there's some logic to this, right? Males, on average, perform about 25% better in physical feats. These are really loose numbers, but this is a known fact. It's not like men and women are physiologically exactly the same. Of course not, right? So all male division is probably going to do better on average than one that's mixed on physical activities. So what's the explanation for that dichotomy?
And I will say, the women who there are individual women who can exceed the standard by far and could be, the fact that 2 women made it through Ranger School. Mm-hmm. That's fucking hard. It's a lot harder than these Marine training camps that these people were in. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, my own experience when I was in was, I was only in a mixed unit as a cadet because I was in the cavalry, so I was in all-male units once I was in the service. But as a cadet, you go to something called advanced camp between your junior and senior year when they grade you. And this is everybody in ROTC, in the country. And you're in mixed units and platoons, and it's probably 15 to 20% female in the platoons. And, this is the officer corps. These are going to be the most dedicated, physically fit, capable, able women. And when we did forced marches, none of them finished the march with their equipment. All their equipment they started with. A guy was carrying someone's backpack, and someone else carrying their weapon and their helmet. And I never saw, on the mental task, they're just as good as any male soldier. But on the physical task, most things involving war involve upper body strength. And women don't have it. As a general rule. So there are individuals who definitely do, but they found in this study that the top 10% of women physically are on par with the bottom 40% of men, physically. So part of it also, when I think about the military, is that if you're going to be drafted, I'm sure everybody wants to be in combat when there's not a big war, but if we ever have to go back to a draft, how are they going to differentiate between men and women and who has to go to what kinds of units?
33-year-old Rebecca Wax just recently graduated from a fire academy, and she will soon be part of the New York Fire Department. Now, she is in the middle of a lot of controversy because she apparently did not pass the physical test necessary to pass in order to become a firefighter. However, Bill de Blasio, according to the New York Post, has lowered the standards of firefighters so more women can get hired. Now, this number is kind of incredible. Only 44 out of the New York Fire Department's 10,500 firefighters are female. So there is a little bit of an issue there, but I don't think that standards should ever be lowered, especially when it comes to something as serious and as physical as being a firefighter. But nonetheless, Rebecca Wax did really good in the academic portion of her firefighter studies, but she didn't pass the physical test in order to become a firefighter. Nonetheless, since both test scores combined equates to more than 75%, she's able to still become a firefighter. That's the way it works. Okay, so she's not the only female candidate to not pass. So 3 women did get hired into the fire department. 2 of the women actually did pass with flying colors. She did not pass the physical portion of the test. I don't care unless there is a clear case of discrimination. When it comes to certain jobs, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like men and women are built exactly the same. Men and women are not built the same. So in some cases, men have a better physical capacity to do certain jobs. However, in this case, there were 2 other women who passed the physical test with flying colors. They didn't change the physical test in any way, shape, or form, and that makes me happy. That means they can be firefighters, they can do their thing, and that's the way it should work. You shouldn't lower the standards so women can just enter that field, because then it makes it seem like all the women who actually did earn it, they did pass the test, got there because, oh, look at them. They just lowered the standards. That's why they're there. It's an insult to the women who actually did pass the physical test.
That's actually one of my points against affirmative action. I think it was absolutely needed in the beginning, but now it unfortunately stereotypes every minority in a top school or at a good job, where jerks get to say, oh, you know how they got there, right? So now that's going to do that for women in the fire department when they're going to say, oh, you know how they got there, when that's actually not the case for everyone except this particular person.
Affirmative action is very different, though, because in the case of affirmative action, there is a lot of discrimination playing a role. So affirmative action was there to mitigate that.
No, I know, and in the beginning I was in favor of it, but at this point I think that it has become a little counterproductive.
Well, the entry requirements for women into firefighting brigades and military service are heavily skewed to favor them because of affirmative action. While the entry requirements for men and women are different, it is quite surprising that you'll hear someone having a problem with firemen being called firemen, or another one arguing that men and women in such fields are equally as qualified. The fact that men and women are not subjected to similar entry requirements because of affirmative action implies that they cannot be assigned to similar responsibilities, neither can they be exposed to similar risks. But you know what is the same? Their checks. They preach out here about equal pay for the same job, and yet that's not what they want. Somehow they don't have a problem when it gets to equal pay for dissimilar jobs in favor of women. Men are supposed to be allies, all right.
Do you think men are important? Like for what? We'll take a break. We'll be back.
For most of human history, men have been the dominant sex because of their capacity to compete, take risks, and fight for resources. But some claim that these masculine traits have become obsolete. Today we need other qualities: empathy, social intuition, emotional intelligence, and here it appears that women excel. Men, some say, are just passé. Women are joining men as partners in running the world, but we're not replacing them and never will. I mean, yes, women are flourishing in unprecedented ways, but men have hardly vanished from the scene. I mean, it's still men who are more likely to start businesses, file for patents, tell jokes, write editorials, conduct orchestras, blow things up. Men succeed and fail more spectacularly than females. So there are more males who are Nobel laureates and CEOs, but also more who are in maximum security prisons. Men commit most of the acts of wanton violence, but it usually takes other men to stop them. The male declinists seem to imagine a world of busy, consensus-building women happily and competently interacting and managing the new economy. So they paint this picture where there's just going to be an explosion of jobs in the caring and nurturing and communicating professions: social workers, website designers, personal coaches, executive producers. Well, sorry to disturb this idyll, but you cannot sustain a network of nurturers and communicators without those hard-driven, innovators, manufacturers, builders, transporters, not to mention the military. And men still hold the lion's share of dangerous, dirty, and necessary jobs that few women seem to want. Men are still the truck drivers, the builders, the coal miners, the sewer workers. I mean, are those jobs passé? We're told that toughness and assertiveness are obsolete. That's ridiculous. The world is a dangerous place. I mean, think of China with its millions of unattached young men, or volatile patriarchal societies where radical Sharia law prevails. Our civilization still depends on brave men who are willing to fight and die to protect us. Now, I know there are brave and admirable women who are willing to do that as well, but how many? Most warriors are men. And today, women are about, 15% of active duty military personnel, and very few of those want to be in combat. About 7% according to one study of women in the Army. Now consider science and technology. Now, in fields like psychology, biology, veterinary medicine, women are overtaking men. But those numbers don't hold in physics, computer science, engineering, where men still prevail. So there's little sign that that's changing very much. Several years ago, Hasbro Toys tested a furnished playhouse that it was considering marketing to both boys and girls. But it soon became clear that girls and boys did not interact with the structure in the same way. The girls kissed the dolls, played house. The boys catapulted the baby carriage off the roof. Well, a Hasbro general manager came up with a novel explanation. Boys and girls are different. And I would add that when they grow up, they complement one another. When parents take a child to the park to play on a climbing structure, a jungle gym or something, the mother typically says, "Be careful." The father, "Can you get to the top?" Today it's fashionable to claim that we no longer need the catapulters or the "can you get to the top" crowd. But we do. The cartoonist Nicole Hollander once asked, "Can you imagine a world without men?" And her answer was, there'd be no crime and lots of happy, fat women. Well, I think crime would probably decline, and we'd probably put on a few pounds. But would we be happy? Not most of us. Women, alas, love men and need them. Their fate is our fate. This is not a zero-sum competition. Men are not finished because neither men nor women will permit that to happen. Well, do you think men are passé? Or do you agree with me that it's time to accept the fact that the sexes complement each other? We need one another.